Welcome to the Constructed Awareness Podcast. In this episode, Jandira Zaki joins Tyler Orr to discuss nonviolence and constructed awareness. Welcome to another episode of the Constructed Awareness Podcast. I'm Tyler Orr, creator of Constructed Awareness, and I have on with me today Jandira Zaki. Did I say that?
Yes.
Is it close enough?
Yep, it is.
Okay. I don't know how to roll my R's like you do, so I'll let you say it here in just a second. But like I said, I'm Tyler Orr. I created Constructed Awareness several years ago. Guess it's been almost 5-6 years now. And so we do this podcast as a way to disseminate information about constructed awareness. And today I have Jandira with me to talk about a concept called nonviolence. So, introduce myself. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. As Tyler said, my name is Jandira Zaki. I am a outpatient psychotherapist at Three Oaks Behavioral Health and Wellness here in North Carolina.
Great.
So excited to be here. And I think now my knowledge with constructed awareness, I'm coming up my possibly second year.
Okay.
Which is crazy to think about. So yeah, very happy to be here.
Good. I'm glad you're here. I wanted to have you on when I was thinking about, okay, who can I bring on to talk about this concept of nonviolence? You were like the first that came to mind because I just have this memory of like the way that you reacted to this in the training that, like your level 1 training that you attended. Like I've seen this topic have like an impact on people, but it seemed like it had a really strong impact on you. So kind of wanted to like have you on and hear your story because it's different from mine because I've never attended a CA training, not as a participant, right? So I guess I don't know or really remember like what it's like to hear it initially. Cause my first encounter to it was reading about it. And I'll talk about that. So I'm excited because we've talked a little bit about how it's impacted you. So I'm personally excited to hear your story in more of this sort of formal fashion. So
I am happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Real quick recap in case you're new to CA, it's first time listening, take just a second to give like a quick spiel about what CA is so we kind of know moving forward. So the easiest way that I found to describe CA is to talk about its 3 principles. And the first principle really is tied into this nonviolence that we're going to talk about. So the first principle is if you bring awareness to something, it changes. It's like how little kids behave differently if they're being watched versus if they're not. So we don't put, as CA therapists, you and I, we don't put any energy into trying to change the client's experience. We put our energy into helping them deepen their awareness of their experience. And so we lean on awareness itself as the mechanism of change. And in order to accomplish that, we use this concept of nonviolence, right? Actually, I don't think we really need to get into the second and third principle today. We'll just focus on the first one, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Would it be okay if I kind of just define, like, and talk about nonviolence and violence in therapy and set that up?
And that will help me like, oh yeah, this is what stood out to me.
Great. Yeah, we can both kind of share our experiences of like how we came to this. So I first came across this idea in this book here. This is Ron Kurtz, Body-Centered Psychotherapy. Now, Ron Kurtz is a hero of mine in the therapy world. He's passed away now. But big influence on me. He developed a therapy called the Hakomi method, which I found a lot of people haven't heard of that, which is too bad because it's great. He was, I guess, a teacher of Pat Ogden, who developed sensory motor psychotherapy. A lot of people have heard about sensory motor. But really sensory motor, my understanding is it's Hakomi with more somatic stuff. Okay. So Pat Ogden kind of expanded that, and a big part of sensory motor, it incorporates this nonviolence piece. But in this book, he said that if you simply assume you know what's best for someone, you're behaving or you're practicing violently. And I don't know like how you felt when I first brought that up in the training, but that was really hard for me to grasp. Like that was a hard pill to swallow. I mean, there was a physical objection to that. It felt so extreme to call that violence. And maybe that's intentional. You know, I wish I could ask him, like, is that intentional to use such a strong, intense word? But for me, I felt like it was needed to kind of jolt me out of the therapeutic mindset that I was in. Because basically, as I kept reading, it just began to just make all the sense in the world. So basically, if you decide as a therapist that you know what's best for the client, and you start to impose your will onto them in any way, it's an oppressive, violent act. But the kicker was, he said, it's violent even if the thing you're assuming is best is that they feel better. Right?
I'm feeling it now.
You're feeling it now, yeah.
Yep.
But even that is an oppressive, violent action. So, you know, we kind of thought that's what violence is. You know, nonviolence is sort of the opposite of that. Nonviolence is like complete and utter non-interference, right? Very much in line with like Rogers, you know, the unconditional positive regard. So it definitely fits into the humanistic approach to therapy. But that changed my life. It took me a while to figure out how to be that, like how to operate in that way, but it changed my life as a clinician, but also as like just a person in relationship, you know, with like with my wife and my kids and my friends. But yeah, I guess I'm curious now that we've set that up. So imagine everybody who's watching or listening, like we're in a training, I'm teaching this, and it's landing with everybody differently. I guess I'm curious, like in that moment, Jandira, like what was it like for you?
My first thought was, damn, well, can we curse up here?
Sure, go for it. Yeah, we'll put the explicit link.
I was like, beep. I'm violent. Like I am a violent therapist, and not, you know, nothing physical or anything like that, but in regards to how nonviolence is being translated in this setting, it would come off as simple of like, in some ways, I was even questioning how I was taught in school or how other modalities have approached, because by just even suggesting or telling a client, this is how it came up for me, by telling a client of like, well, how about we do this? Or let's do this. Even by initiating that, it wasn't invitational, and that would be considered violent. And from there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this whole time I thought I was being opened and welcoming, and how the simplest of words could just be violence, or me thinking like, oh, if you do this, you'll feel better. Again, that of me trying to control
right
the environment without thinking it, right? I'm like, but no, I'm trying to help them, right? Like, no, I'm not doing violence. So in some way I can see maybe for some people it could come off defensive, especially if they don't understand or don't really know about the concept of constructed awareness and where it's come from. So easily it could be seen defensive, but once you really get to know it, that's what the shift for me of like, I was unintentionally violent to my clients by just trying to make them feel the opposite of what I thought they should feel.
Right.
And in that regard had nothing to do with them. It had more to do with me, how I felt comfortable in the session to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah, that's good. And you explained that so well. I just want to clarify, when we say violent, we're not talking about like physical violence. Right. You know, you weren't physically assaulting your clients. It's more of just like the approach. And again, I think maybe that's what people struggle with it, because it is such, I mean, it's almost like a violent word. I mean,
exactly.
You know what I mean? And so it sounds so extreme, but what we're talking about here is just like imposing and interfering and like just making decisions for clients like basically declaring ourselves the expert of their lives and saying like, here, you should do this, or even if it's you should feel better. But I remember like early on, this was like, I was a young therapist. I was like, but we're supposed to make people feel better.
Mm-hmm. That's our job. That's why they're coming to see us. And
insurance companies want us to make them feel better, right?
Exactly. And what even combats that, what made it harder, was recognizing that, you know, when I would do more open-ended or invitational suggestions, like, you know, can we talk about this? I've had, especially in and I'm thinking back from my previous job in that setting of being called doctora, which means doctor in Spanish, but just like, but you're the doctora, or you went to school, you know what I should be doing. Like, you're the professional. And even that was prior to me learning about CA. I was like, oh, no, I'm not a doctor, but no, I'm the professional. I went to school for this. So yeah, I should be giving the strategies, to now how easily that could influence that violent approach of like, oh yeah, I am the licensed clinician. I should know what should make them feel better.
And that puts actually more pressure on you as the therapist, thinking that you have to have all these answers for the clients, right? And that you're supposed to like do something,
right,
to make them feel better.
Exactly. And in this case, doing nothing is doing something for them, ironically enough.
Ironically, yeah. And that's what I learned. It's like learning to really pull back that need to help so much. You know, you probably heard me say before, it's like therapists feel the need to help the most when they feel the most helpless.
Yes.
So when you feel helpless, help less. And like that really came from like reading this book and realizing like sometimes like last week I was talking to a consultation group, and I never thought of it this way, but I said that as therapists, we typically do two things. We hold space or fill space. And I think most of us have a tendency to feel this pressure to fill the space with like whatever, you know, words of wisdom or exercises that's supposed to make someone feel better. But in my experience, like trying to make someone feel better is really just kind of robbing them of their own ability to process, to work through. It's a silly analogy, but I tell clients all the time, like if your goal for therapy was to learn to work on old cars that don't run well, it wouldn't do you any good if I just gave you new cars that run great. Like,
true.
Right? If like the client is here, you know, in session because they want to learn to work on their anxiety, what good does it do if we just keep working to try to make them feel no anxiety?
Right. And I love you saying that, because in that regard, I've had multiple clients come in. It's like, I want to fix my anxiety. And when they say the word fix, I'm like, ugh, like that, then I may not be the one for you, because we're going to sit with the anxiety, right? We're going to welcome it. But just that part, kind of, when you said, when you feel helpless, help less. I remember after learning about the nonviolent approach, immediately I wanted to incorporate that into my sessions in a new way, where I would sit with a client and I practice constructed awareness on myself, which which I will rave on about this, how constructed awareness, I will repeat it. Even if I never use it again on my clients, it will continue to impact my life. It has such a dual role for my personal life and my professional life. So personally, I sat in session and I'm like, okay, let me be aware of when I have that itch or that urge to suggest something or try to fix something for a client. Tyler, the many times I had to like sit in my chair and just make myself feel like I was making myself shut up and not say anything and just say I can't even remember. Is it, how does that show up? How is that showing up right now? Instead of continuing on the conversation of like, oh yeah, you should do this or that. It felt each time I was strained to my chair. And now with it and practicing more personal and professionally, the nonviolent approach, I feel unclenched, and I'm like, now I'm able to sit. And now I even encourage clients to, hey, again, asking them, right? Because I could easily say, hey, you know what? You said something. I want to get back to that. Can we focus on that? Let's focus on that. And that can come off as a violent way of like, again, I'm leading the session versus learning how to make it invitational and ask. You had mentioned something. Could we go back to that?
Would you like
to? Yes. Would you like to go back to it and kind of sit with it and see how your body responds? Because I think a lot of my clients appear to be very mentally oriented just because I am. So even helping with that and giving that space where it's like, let's just sit with whatever emotion that's showing up for you rather than trying to pass over it or fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them break down crying because they've never done that. And it's like, what? Like now they're really sitting with their emotions. Others are like confused, like, excuse me, like you're inviting me to do this versus they're usually are used to being told what to do and kind of getting that self-agency back. There's no, literally, they have no words like I am. Like, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, did I hear you say that?
It's so foreign, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that you might be the first person that's ever done that for them because, like, everybody has probably just rushed to some sort of solution or, you know. And I want to talk, you were leaning into, like, that nonviolent sort of language, and I want to talk about that. But would it be okay?
Yes.
If we backed up just a little bit?
Yes.
There we go. I'm practicing it in the moment, right?
And it's crazy how naturally it can come up of like, whoop, but then catching ourselves and going back.
Yeah, instead of being like, okay, we're going to go back to this, like, which could maybe dismiss your experience, but let's get to the nonviolent language. But I wanted to talk about like that, like gripping you're talking about, like
the cherry.
Wanting to, and I want to say interrupt the client, the process or whatever. But you stopped and waited. I think that's important to talk about because notice like the discomfort that you were feeling, that instead of like acting on, you just brought awareness to it. It's almost always, maybe I could say always, the therapist's discomfort that leads them to interfere with the client's process. It's never really the client's discomfort, right? Yep. You would only change a client's or attempt to change a client's experience or state if you were uncomfortable with that. There's never been a moment when you feel great in session, right? The client is comfortable, they're at ease, and you feel at ease. You're never going to try to change that.
Exactly.
So it shows us there's a preference for what we think is acceptable and unacceptable as therapists, and we're really just reinforcing that conditioning that like certain feelings are good and certain feelings are bad. So, and really that's the only reason anyone ever gives advice like that. Mm-hmm. Not to make the client feel better. That's what we think we're trying to do, but really we're just trying to make ourselves feel better.
Right.
So maybe we can reflect on that. Is anything coming up?
Yeah, what's coming up for me is the concept of kind of like that challenge. Again, I'm going back to grad school of get used to sitting with the silence, right? And not saying anything, not interrupting the client, but the slightest difference that I don't know why it's a feeling that's just coming up for me right now. I'm feeling a slight difference between sitting with the silence, like, yeah, just sit with the silence. If the client's quiet, you're quiet. This gives the opportunity for the client to say something or really dig in, versus holding the silence. I think that's the piece with constructed awareness. Giving that space to the client to really sit with the silence and ask, what is coming up for you right now? And it's funny because clients usually try to go of like trying to come up with a response that they think they want me to hear, where I have to be like kind of slowly welcome them back. No, it's not about the answer. I'm like, what is happening to you right now in this moment as we're sitting in silence? Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, oh, this is awkward. What tells you it's awkward, right? Mm-hmm. It can be a laughing moment. Other times again, providing that space for the client to really what's foreign to them. So yes, when you were mentioning that, it just came up. There's a difference, for me at least, a taste to it of sitting with it versus holding the silence for them.
That's right. And we talked about filling the space. If that worked, like the client's friends and families would have solved all their problems already.
Oh yeah.
If telling somebody what to think or feel worked, there wouldn't be therapists, because the client would have figured it out a long time ago, because everybody's so quick to give their opinions. Mm-hmm. And it's usually differing opinions. And I'll tell clients all the time, it's like, I could give you advice, but if I'm being honest, I would just be making shit up.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. And the secret is, everyone who gives you advice, that's what they're doing too. Mm-hmm. They don't know. They're not the expert of your life. They're just trying to say something to make you stop doing what you're doing, mm-hmm. so that they feel better. And then what happens, like Ron Kurtz in this book, he talked about how he says if you use if you use violence, you get resistance. Mm-hmm. So basically, it's like if you have two opposites. So if you're listening and you're not watching, sorry, I'm doing hand motions, but if the client says on one hand, like, I'm worthless, everything in you wants to say, well, no, you're great, you're worthy. Now you've created a duality. You've got, I'm worthless on one hand, you're worthy on another hand. And they push against each other. Mm-hmm. And like, that's what resistance is. It's when two things push against each other. When you do resistance training, you're pushing against a weight, right? But that can cause an enormous amount of tension. Like, that's what a tornado is, right? It's two opposing fronts collide, right? And so when that duality occurs and it creates that tension, it can create a lot of resistance between you and the client in really subtle ways. Sometimes, like, I'm in a PhD program, and like a class that I'm in right now is like a practicum, and like every week I would watch another student do a demonstration video of, like, video of them with a client. Mm-hmm. I saw so much like violence in that. Mm. And like, it just seemed to me like the therapist was arguing with the client. Mm-hmm. The client would be like, oh, I'm just so stupid. And they're like, oh no, you're really smart. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's just low key, like arguing, like you're just dismissing, it being kind of confrontational in a real subtle way. And like, my fear, and I know I can be kind of critical of traditional therapy in this way, so I'll apologize if it's, but like things like thought stopping and thought reframing, positive affirmations, I just think it's therapeutic repression. Mm-hmm. Because you're not teaching the client to experience their experience in any sort of new way. You're just teaching them another way to cut off, right? To dismiss their experience. And I think in a subtle way, it probably just reinforces what they probably have heard from friends and families and society their whole lives. Right?
Or it's temporary, right? Something else happens, and then it just, those conflicting voices get louder. I'm smiling when you share that. Thank you for sharing, Tyler, because I'm thinking about what came up for me similarly was with my interns. So I'm also the program manager of the internship program. And part of that is supervising some interns. And they're just so fresh. But again, the traditional therapy. And I'm like, no, like, yes. And I know this is what they're teaching at school, and also here CA, because they would be like, Jandira, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, what's going on? And it's with the client. It turns out there's always that one client that you give suggestions, and the client comes back and either they didn't do it or it's not working, and that gets my interns frustrated. And then and it's funny because then I switch it up on them. I was like, is it okay? Could we welcome that frustration right now? How is it showing up for you? Mm-hmm. And I think this kind of goes into level 2 of CA with reconstructing memories, but it always goes back to like, oh, it reminds me of this, or not doing what I've told them to do, and this. And I was like, but that's not our job.
Yeah.
And still trying to be mindful of our job isn't to fix people, but still in the master's program and the intern, trying to be respectful of that, but just incorporating that piece of how would it feel if you were to sit with your client and just welcome that emotion right then and there and see how it's showing up for them right then and there. And I don't know if it's me exaggerating or what, but I for some reason, the image that's coming up for me is like my interns literally like shoulders going back, sigh of relief. And I was like, how is that coming up for you? And they're like, I didn't know I could do so much with so little. Like, is that still therapy? And I'm like, yes, it is.
Yeah. That's a whole other side. I think because like we talk about like person-centered or, humanistic stuff in school, but it always kind of goes more to the CBT kind of route. And I think because it's so like concrete, you can do these worksheets and you can do these, miracle question or whatever, So it feels like we're doing therapy when a lot of times it's doing less. And like, I just want to say, like, I was that intern.
Same.
But I didn't have someone like you to guide me. Like I wish I had. I mean, because that's what initially led to what would become CA, because I did everything I was taught in school. I learned how to do the treatment plan and identify the problem and come up with these, coping exercises and different things. And, there's so many experiences where like, we would figure it out. This is the problem. Here's how we're going to work with it. We come up with a plan. It's rock solid. I'd feel good. I feel like a real therapist at the end of the session. But then like the next week, the client would come back feeling worse. They still had the same problem. Nothing had changed, but now they're like double whammied with all these thoughts of like, what's wrong with me? Why wasn't I strong enough to deal with this, problem or stick to the plan? And that just happened over and over again. And eventually, like, it caused me to just sort of say, well, like, this isn't for me, like this way of doing therapy. So I started to like explore like what creates change. What are some other ways? If willpower isn't enough, which it's just not for most people,
right?
What works? And like through a series of life events and different things, I realized that just awareness itself has this power to bring change. And the nonviolence is tied to that. So it was a perfect fit for me because the nonviolent piece taught me how to stay out of the way long enough for the client to actually become aware. And it taught me to learn to be more comfortable. I don't say it's comfortable, but more comfortable with the client's discomfort. Because even though like this is something that I truly believe in, I'm sure you feel the same way. There are times where I just want to give some sort of solution, just make them feel better. But even in the language, you hear that, make them feel better.
Yes, I was going to point that out because even when you were mentioning that of like, again, I know, we're not trying to trash CBT or anything. It is that concrete foundation, especially for newly graduated folks. By even just suggest, let's make a plan now. We're going to do this, even how it depends how you even suggest it or welcome it. Right. And I think for me, that's why it shook me so hard where I was like, oh my goodness, just how I've been thinking about, or not just how I've been communicating with my clients of like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this worksheet.
Here's what you need to do.
Yes. I'm like, I've been violent. And it just hits differently. And honestly, there are days like when I do want to provide a strategy for them, where it's something like, let's talk about distress tolerance skills or something like that. It's the way that I try to incorporate the nonviolence approach is, would you like to try something new? Can I invite you to do something? Can I make a suggestion? Like being very careful with my wording. And that's when you're incorporating both.
Yeah. And also like the language where it's like you have like an agenda or like an expected outcome. That's where it gets really like hairy. Like I think you can, and again, I'm glad you said that. I'm not trying to like say that CBT and traditional therapy is not good. It's great. It just has its limits, right? And so, but we can do, if you can do like the traditional exercises. I heard him bark.
Yep, my dog warning me.
All right, he's gonna take care of it. So, where were we?
See, you can still do CBT. It has its limitations.
Okay. Yeah, it does. But it's like that outcome where it's like, okay, we're going to do this exercise to regulate. We're going to do this exercise to feel calmer. You ever been to like a meditation or some sort of like yoga thing, and the instructor is like, and on your next exhale, just let all that tension wash away.
Yep.
You ever had that happen and it didn't wash away?
Yeah, I'm like, no, the tension's still there. Not like, as much, but it's still there.
I'm like, dang, what did I do wrong? Like, it didn't work, right? And that creates tension. So when you put that like outcome, like, okay, we're going to do this to feel better, it leads for a high likelihood of like disappointment. And in some ways, I hate to say it, but there's a possibility for the therapist to feel disappointed in the client. And that's another problem with like advice giving. If the client doesn't follow through with the advice, it's very human nature to have resentment toward them, even for therapists, right? But like mindfulness, great topic on this. Mindfulness is like the third wave of psychotherapy. Like it's the biggest thing in the world, right, for therapy. But it has become something that is not mindfulness, right? It's like become another tool that therapists keep in their toolbox to change a client's state.
Yes.
It's like,
I'm anxious. I'm thinking about this. Okay, let's be present. Let's do this.
Let's do this mindfulness exercise. Like mindfulness has become synonymous with the word peaceful. But mindfulness has nothing to do with peace.
Yeah.
It's being present with what is, even if it's the opposite of peace.
Right.
So I don't know, like, if you're using mindfulness to replace an undesirable state and make it a more desirable state, sorry, but that's not mindfulness. That's repression.
That's violent. See how it just comes up, and it's like, I hope in some ways it does shock people. And the shock like that I had of like in a nonviolent way, exactly. But also recognize you are not alone. If you're listening to this podcast and exactly with that example that you just gave, Tyler, to be like, oh my gosh, I've been doing that. I don't know if it'll be to the extreme that I was thinking I'm violent. You are not alone, because I feel like this has been a switch with so many clinicians when they've started constructed awareness. Even to that piece of speaking about clients, right, where I've done mindfulness in the sense of not trying to change an undesirable state, but more of like what is what it is. Let's sit with it. And again, with the principle of by bringing awareness to an experience, it changes the experience. My clients have come out after we've sat with it and not try to change it, where they're like, oh my gosh, this was great. I feel better. Thank you. And I'll be like, oh, awesome. And I can't promise you that you're going to feel that way again. We were just sitting with your emotions. I didn't tell you, hey, we're going to sit with these emotions and you're going to feel better. I said, it's going to change your experience. I didn't say how. We didn't know how. Exactly. So I'm like, disclaimer, you will probably not feel this way when we do it again, because I also I would like my clients to understand changing your experience. This mindfulness piece, sitting with it, taking this nonviolent approach even to your emotions made you have a better outcome, but that wasn't guaranteed. Right.
And then we'll chase that same good feeling every time we do the exercise after that, which creates more tension. Whereas I think the goal is instead just to be curious and be present with whatever it is that's coming up.
Right. And even with this, like, catching myself real time of saying, I want them to know, again, humanizing the aspect of being having a violent approach, but then correcting it. We're still humans. It's going back. I continue to sometimes use it in my therapy, and then even catch it and be like, whoa, let me reframe that with my clients, as well as in my personal life as well. So I'm not perfect. It still shows up.
Right. And that's good. I'm glad you're able to notice it and correct it. And I think like even showing that with clients, like you're teaching that sort of nonviolent language by correcting and like stating how, the more nonviolent way. That like the "I want you to" sounds so harmless, but like it sounds so awful to me. Like when I just said that, like I got the ick all over. Like, "I want you to." I was in a training one time. I won't say what training it was, but the trainer was one of the more violent therapists I've ever seen. But he had this really interesting way of talking, like teaching like nonviolent language. He just didn't call it that. But he did something I'll never forget. Like we were in some like group practice and someone was practicing and they said, "I want you to," and he said, "Stop." He said, "No one cares what you want." In front of the whole group, which is such a violent thing, but that burned in me. It's like, wow, that's true. And it's like almost every experience that we're processing with clients, it's experiences of powerlessness where they had no choice. So even to say like, I want you to, or, it's like you're taking that choice out of it. And I think in real subtle ways can kind of reinforce that powerlessness. So even just like, is a good segue, I think, to talk about like officially, we've touched on it, but like instead of like, "I want you to," it's a helpful practice to be more like, I'd like to invite you to. Would you like to? Right? If you can think of any others, are you open to trying? Whatever. It's like being just more invitational, more curiosity invoking in the way that we introduce things. Like, I'd like to invite you to is a fantastic one.
Yeah.
Right?
Or even I typically use, would you be open to being more curious about that, about what you're going through? Because even touching that base of the powerlessness and how by using more action-oriented language, it can continue to take that power away from the client. Even when I open up that space for "would you," more welcoming, it's giving this power back to the clients to actually sit with it or however they want, and continuing to sometimes not even knowing what to do with that, because like you said, we may be the first ones giving that space for that client. And even within that, exploring that state of uncertainty. It's like, wait, what does that look like about being curious? I've never done that before. I'm used to people telling me what to do, or not even ask questions, right? I think in the Latino culture is very, or the hierarchy piece of do as I say, you don't talk back to your parents. You don't even question anything, because questioning is a sign of being disrespectful, right? And not just in the Latino cultures. I'm sure this can be expanded in various cultures. So then bringing that back to specifically my Latino folks or other culture folks, when I'm like, could we explore that or sit with that? It's astounding to them. And the very shyness of, I don't know if it's shyness or maybe even sometimes guilt or shame comes up of like, am I allowed to do this? It's very profound work when it comes up.
Yeah, and it made me think, like, somebody taught me once that like no baby is born with the ability to self-regulate. Well, that's not true. The way that a baby self-regulates is to shut down, like dissociate, right? Because out of the fight, flight, freeze, they don't have strong arms to fight, strong legs to run, so they just shut down. They cut off from their experience. So as far as like regulating in a healthy way, like a baby isn't born with that ability. They learn to do it through co-regulating with a caregiver. And so, but most of us we didn't have parents that were capable of doing that. All they needed to do was cut off from their experience in all these different ways. So, at least in the society that I grew up in, the culture I grew up in, probably this similar thing for what you grew up in, but it's like when we experience pain, what we needed was a grown-up to be like, "I'm so sorry. Let me be with you. Let's feel this together. I'm here for you." Right? But what, we got probably some sort of like walk it off, ignore it. We don't talk about that. We don't whatever. very dismissive. And again, it's just reinforcing that the proper way to deal with experience is to cut it off.
Yeah.
Right. So I always think about that in terms of, like, if that's true, what if us as CA therapists, what if we provide that missing experience from childhood where we're just co-regulate? We're not trying to regulate anybody. That's a hard thing for therapists to grasp. Like CA therapists, we do not try to regulate anyone. It's not our job. I think it's impossible, right? Because, like, somebody else, and I guess I wish I knew who said this so I could cite them, but they said that no animal chooses what they feel. So if a zebra sees a lion coming toward it and it has to decide to be afraid, it has to be like, okay, body, I'm now choosing to be afraid. Heart beat faster, adrenaline release. If it had to do that, it would reduce its chances of survival. So our emotions, like, they're involuntary, and a lot of our behaviors are too. Like, the zebra doesn't decide to run; it just runs, right? And so, but, like, our emotions are dictated by the autonomic branch of our nervous system. So notice the prefix; they're auto. They're involuntary. We can't control them; they just happen. Think about it. If you were in control of that, would you choose to feel upset ever again?
Right? No. I'd probably try to stay happy.
And so, but clients come in with this idea that they are in control of what they feel because of the messages they received growing up of, like, don't be upset, don't worry, don't cry. It gives this false impression that we can control it, our experience, but there's so much of it that we can't. And so that's why I think, like, teaching someone, like, that you can use willpower to overcome emotions is just terrible advice. Because we don't really have control over it like we think we do. And and that's the thing, if the client doesn't have control over what their experience is, why would I think I would have any control over their experience?
Right.
So I just stopped trying.
Yep.
Right. I stopped trying to regulate clients. I stopped trying to make them feel better. Instead, I just do my very best to co-regulate with them, just to be present, to welcome these things that they've spent their whole life being told are not acceptable. Right? And for me, that's when healing occurs at a high level. Or at least there's potential for that. Yeah.
What's coming up for me here is within the Latina culture, and again, this can be with any culture, anger. Where anger is sometimes seen as the most permissible emotion, because it's better to be angry than sad or depressed or anxious. And then even having some Latinx clients being afraid to be angry because they can't control it. They're scared that they won't be able to control it. Or they're scared of ruining relationship dynamics because of seeing how it was with their parents or how that messed up with the family dynamics. And providing, and again, using anger as just one example, providing a safe space for a client to just welcome that emotion and be like, can we welcome that? Would you be open to being angry right now?
Yeah.
Right? How does that look like? And in a way, it just taking away the stigma, the stereotype behind what their culture has made anger to be.
Yep. And I think that's true as well, especially for, like, because I grew up, South white culture. We definitely see that with, like, women more than men. Men, it's almost kind of celebrated anger, but women, it's like, so I see that a lot, especially like with but typically with clients who don't have an awareness or the ability to connect with anger. I just see a lot of, like, disempowerment. Because, like, your anger response is your empowerment response, and they're just naturally kind of cut off from that, and that's really hard for people like that. So it takes a lot of patience too, to just learn to be comfortable as a therapist and, like, welcome that. It's like modeling that. I think that's the co-regulation, where it's like, I am showing that I'm okay with that discomfort, that anger, or whatever it is, and I'm certain it's a cool feeling, because a lot of times I'm certain I'm the first person in their life that's ever done this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's wild to see like their struggle with it, because like it feels good to accept it, but also it feels bad that it's here.
Yes.
And it's like, so we just welcome that. Like we notice that tension. We notice that that duality that's happening within the client, where it kind of feels good, it kind of doesn't. But yeah, it's just a very different way of working, instead of being like, okay, let's do some exercise to make this anger go.
Exactly. Because I think even with my more Latina clients in the older realm, where they were grown in the more traditional aspect of the culture piece, there's a saying of like, más calladita, más bonita. The more quieter you are, the more prettier you are. So even providing, I'm like, even providing that space of when they are like showing frustration for what their children did or their spouse did, or, you know, the sandwich generational piece of like having to take care of their parents as well as their kids, and feeling like they're not like can even complain or vent, right? No te quejes. I have to do this. I can't complain. And again, giving them that space of like, no, let's welcome that complaining. Again, would you like to welcome that complaint, that anger? And in the beginning, it's very conflicting because they haven't had that space. But once they seek more comfort into doing it, oh my goodness, that is just, they connect with their mental, their sensations. It feels like a privilege just to be sitting there with them and being like, not giving them, but having them use our space to feel safe enough to be like, I can bring any emotion here in front of Tyler, in front of Jandira. There's no judgment, and I can just sit with it and express it. Such a privilege.
It is, and it feels so different. Like there was a client recently that like just kept, like she just kind of was like kept wanting advice, and she kind of knows that's not my style. But it's like that's how she's used to operating in the world. And we've talked about how, like, you know, how does that feel when somebody like really gives, you know, their opinion, and she's like, well, not really that good. But it's like, she just wanted to receive advice. So finally I was like, okay, would it be okay if I just gave you advice now? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, can you do me a favor? When I do, just notice like how your body reacts. Like notice like your mind, how does your system react to receiving advice? She's like, okay. And I was like, you should break up with your boyfriend. He's no good for you. She was like, that felt awful. Yeah. And I was like, and I was like, and I don't know if that's true either.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and it was just like, it was cool to do that. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's like, you can do sort of the traditional exercises, just do it as a way to bring curiosity. And like, there's no desired outcome. You're just noticing. It's almost like you drop it in and notice what comes up. Yep. Right. Because that's so much more like paying attention to what's happening instead of making it go away, and is so much more informative. Yeah, I did something similar to that, where a client was going through some stuff, and she had these like this statement coming up for her, and I was like, could we be curious about that statement? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, let's be curious of like, when you say it, she's Spanish, she's bilingual. I was like, let's say it in English, and, you know, seeing what comes up for you in your body. And she did that, bringing awareness to that. And then we switched it into Spanish. And that experience for her was like, kind of like, I don't have to listen to this voice when it's in Spanish versus it had more, I don't know, the English version of it seemed to have more impact on her. And when we switched it to Spanish, it was like, no, this is nothing, like whatever, like she could take it off. It wasn't affecting her as much. And that was interesting versus me being like, oh, well, what if we reframe that thought, right? Let's try to change this. Where it was like, let's just be curious if we change the language towards it. How does it come up for you? I love that. That makes me wonder, like I've wondered a lot, and I've talked to CA therapists that work like primarily with non-white clients, or they work more just marginalized in general, like maybe like neurodivergent clients. And I keep hearing CA works well with those populations, and like that's something that I really want to like dig into with research later to know why, but like maybe you'd have an idea. But I'm just curious, like I do hear people say it's the nonviolent piece that's so helpful, because like we're not imposing what is with therapy traditionally like a white Eurocentric male perspective, because pretty much everybody that's developed a therapy, you know, not everybody, but the most have been white, but most of the time white and male. So I always wonder, like, is part of what we impose in traditional therapy a very like Eurocentric view of like what healthy is? I don't know if you have anything to say to that. It's kind of interesting that like the English had a different impact than like, I'm assuming that Spanish was their native language. Yeah. They felt like almost lighter, I guess, or less intimidating. So I don't know. I don't know if anything's coming up for you.
Yeah. That's a hard one, because I think sometimes, honestly, I don't know if it's more the Euro aspect of it, or if it's more the gender, the sex aspect of it, of male versus female. Because when I was specifically with that voice, it was, we got curious and it was a female voice. But then when the female switched to Spanish and English, right, that there was a difference. I'm not sure what it would have been like if it was male. So there, I guess overall though, like I'm getting away from the subject. I'm thinking about your question again of like, what's the healthy way to do something? I don't know if it's universal, because a lot of it again comes into that piece of fixing, right? I don't want to speak to all, again, I'm not representative of the entire Latina culture, but it's just that piece of like, ponte las pilas, put on the batteries. We're going to fix this. Keep going, right? Like very solution focused. And it's not until, personally for me and hearing other Latina therapists getting more into that, I guess, ancestral work of connecting the body and the sensations, I think that's when we are shifting away of what is healthy to more like, I think that's what stands out for CA and my clients in that way, is that sensation piece, because by connecting the body, I feel like it is taking away the European aspect of it, right, in that regard. And for me culturally, and again, I've heard from other clinicians where we're personally going through our own journey of what is healing in the ancestral aspect of it, is that sensation piece. Right.
Like you said, what is healing and like what is healthy? That's kind of like I've always been curious, like this, does more traditional therapy bring in like a Eurocentric version or idea of like what healthy is or what healing should look like? Maybe it probably does, but maybe that's not right, or maybe that's not right for certain people. Like, I guess what I'm saying is like, who are we as therapists to say what healthy is? Right. For every single individual, because it's not going to look the same for everybody. And I'm afraid that if we come with these preconceived ideas about like, here's what a desired outcome of therapy looks like, and it does, because there's a lot of like, you know, I know couples therapists that are very much like marriage first. So they come in with that mentality, and that's imposing values. Yep. Right. And so we don't want that. So I guess I've tried to make it a point in my life to sort of sniff out
what is healthy.
Or sniff out like any way that I'm being violent, or I'm introducing that violence or that tension to the session.
And I believe a beautiful way that it's coming up, like where it's taken away where it's taken away the violent approach, adding the nonviolence, is honestly the 3 building blocks of CA. Because what is healthy, or what a client considers healthy, there's not necessarily like it's the fluidity within the 3 building blocks, right? The whether it's mental, sensation, or external. I think the more white male dominated goes very mental. And then I've connecting with other individuals who are trying to more not non-white individuals that are really getting into the sensation aspect to it and wanting to reconnect that way.
Yeah.
Right. Which aligns through a whole nother version of spirituality, which is really incredible that I'm interested in how CA is going to incorporate that one day, because that does comes up for a lot of people sensation wise. Mm-hmm. And then there's also that external piece. So I think by having those 3 building blocks, it is a nonviolent approach, because a client doesn't have to lean to just mental or just sensation or just external. It's tuning between the 3 and deciding in a way how one building block shows up more than the other. And that can be healthy. Right. So I think that's what's been beneficial for my clients in that regard of like, what's the right way to do therapy? I'm just showing them like the other 2 building blocks that they haven't really been aware of at all. And that in turn helps them decide, this is the approach I want to use. These are how I want to use each building blocks for my version of what is healthy for me. Does that make sense?
Yep. And as that happens, they begin to develop their own greater sense of what's good for them. And it doesn't come from some treatment plan that I made as the therapist. It comes from their own inner wisdom. And that's what's so beautiful about the work for me. It's like, I don't have to, or I don't get to decide what that outcome is or what a healthy state looks like for the client. It just unfolds from the process of them learning to discover themselves on a deeper level. Yes. And that's where the 3 building blocks helps, because it kind of helps to understand self in smaller bite-sized pieces, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, I think, that's the piece. And again, that nonviolent approach and introducing the building blocks to them in that way, then they get to decide what is healthy for them.
For them. I love that. So I think we are approaching time. Does this feel like an okay place to stop?
It does.
Yeah, this has been great. Kind of flew by. I looked down at the clock and was like, geez. So hopefully if you're listening, it went by just as fast for you. So let's say someone wanted to get in touch with you. Maybe they liked your vibe from this and they wanted to reach out, and I don't know.
It's like, who's that crazy girl on that CA podcast that be talking Spanglish?
How would they get in touch with you?
They can find me on Psychology Today, Jandira Zaki, and I am primarily see clients out of North Carolina. You can also look for me at the 3 Oaks Behavioral Health and Wellness website, or just Google my name and 3 Oaks Behavioral Health and Wellness will pop up. And find me in the Chapel Hill office area. You click on that and fill out a contact form if they want to start seeing me as a therapist. And I believe pretty soon, I'm put a pause here because I don't know if we're making this official, but hopefully one day pretty soon we're going to have a CA website where all the CA clinicians will be up there, and I'm hoping to be up there as well. So if they wanted to do constructed awareness with me, they will find it on the website soon, TBD.
Soon-ish. We're working on it.
Soon-ish, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that website that it will be on soonish is constructedawareness.com. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can through constructedawareness.com. There's like a form you can fill out, so you can just reach out to me that way. If you want to learn more about constructed awareness, there's so much on constructedawareness.com. I mean, that was the purpose of the website, is to be a place where there's lots of information about it. So there's other podcast episodes that we've done. There's published papers, there's blogs, there's videos. Also, if you want to check us out on social media, it's on all the platforms now, so which we've been active with, which is exciting. So yeah, there's plenty out there to learn about it. But if you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. So I think we'll sign off for today. So thank you so much, Jandira.
Thank you for having me. Good night, everyone.
And thank you, Ron Kurtz, for teaching us about nonviolence. So till next time, take care.
Bye.